Hello, you tired little peeps. It's that time once again. So let's snuggle up fast because tonight we're traveling back in time to look at the slow, rhythmic dance of the waves and the intricate, quiet machinery of the harbors that connected the ancient world. So if you are new to the channel or returning, liking the video significantly helps. Also, please let me know where you're listening in from and what time it is for you. Now get comfortable and let's begin. The water laps gently against the stone quay. It is a consistent, low sound, a rhythm that has not changed in 2,000 years. Before we even see the ships, we can smell the salt in the air, mixed with the sharp scent of pitch and the dusty aroma of dried grain. We are standing at the edge of the Mediterranean, the Mare Nostrum, the great sea that sits at the center of the Roman world like a vast, breathing lung. Tonight, we are not concerned with the great naval battles or the clash of triremes in war. Instead, our focus drifts to the slow, heavy movement of merchant vessels, the workhorses of the water, the silent giants that carry olive oil, wine, and wheat from one end of the empire to the other. Imagine the dawn breaking over the harbor of Ostia. The light is gray and soft, filtering through the morning mist that clings to the surface of the water. The harbor is waking up, but not with a sudden start. It wakes with the creaking of ropes and the groaning of timber. To understand the journey of a Roman cargo ship, we must first look at the very substance from which it is made: the wood. The selection of timber was not a hasty process. It was a slow, deliberate act of observation and knowledge, passed down through generations of shipwrights who knew the grain of a tree better than the lines on their own hands. The keel, the spine of the ship, required something strong, something that could withstand the constant pressure of the deep water. For this, they would often turn to oak. Not just any oak, but Quercus robur, a wood so dense and heavy that it feels more like stone than vegetation. Imagine the texture of the oak bark, rough and deeply fissured. The shipwrights would search for trees that had grown straight and true in the deep forests of the Apennines or the wooded slopes of Mount Ida. They looked for a specific density, a specific resilience. The felling of these trees was methodical, the axe striking the wood, a dull thud echoing through the forest, chip by chip, hour by hour, until the great trunk was brought down to the earth. But a ship cannot be made entirely of oak. It would be too heavy, too sluggish in the water. For the planking, the skin of the vessel that sits between the sailors and the sea, they preferred the lighter woods, pine and fir, Pinus pinea, the stone pine, and Abies alba, the silver fir. Consider the difference in the grain. The fir is softer, pale, and straight. When you run your hand along a planed board of silver fir, it feels smooth, almost waxy. It absorbs the pitch well, drinking in the waterproofing sealant that keeps the Mediterranean out. The pine is more resinous, its scent sharp and clean. These planks were not sawn with powered machinery. They were cut with long two-man saws. Push and pull, push and pull. A hypnotic, repetitive motion that lasted from sunrise to sunset. The sawdust would pile up in soft yellow mounds around the feet of the sawyers, a quiet testament to the slow reduction of the tree into lumber. Once the planks were cut, they were not simply nailed together. The construction of a Roman merchant ship, a navis honoraria, relied on a method known as mortise and tenon joinery. This is a detail that is hidden deep within the hull, invisible to the casual observer, yet it is where the true patience of the builder resides. Imagine the edge of a pine plank. Into this edge, the carpenter chisels a small rectangular slot, the mortise, He does this every few inches, all along the length of the plank. Then, he takes a separate piece of hardwood, usually live oak or olive wood, and shapes a small, flat tongue, the tenon. This tenon is fitted into the mortise. Then, the next plank is brought down, its own corresponding mortises sliding over the exposed half of the tenons. It is a perfect fit, but the work is not done. To lock the joint in place, a hole is drilled through the plank and the tenon, and a wooden dowel, a tree nail, is hammered through. Tap, tap, tap. The sound is dull and repetitive. Thousands of these joints hold the ship together. Thousands of mortises to be chiseled. Thousands of tenons to be shaped. Thousands of dowels to be driven. It is a process of immense repetition, a task that demands a quiet mind and steady hands. There is no rushing this. If a joint is loose, the water will find a way in. So they work slowly, checking each fit, ensuring the wood is flush, ensuring the shell of the ship becomes a single, watertight entity. As the hull rises on the stocks, it takes on a curved, bulbous shape. These are not the sleek, narrow lines of a warship designed for speed. The merchant ship is round and deep, designed for capacity. It is built to hold thousands of amphorae, stacked in precise patterns, or tons of loose grain. The curvature of the hull is achieved by steaming the planks. The wood is heated over open fires or in steam boxes until the fibers relax, until the rigid timber becomes pliable. Then, gently, slowly, it is bent into shape and clamped. As it cools, it remembers the new curve. It sets. The ship is literally molded by heat and patience. Let us look closer at the surface of the hull. It is not left as bare wood. The underwater section, the part that will live its life submerged in the cool darkness of the sea, is coated in lead. Thin sheets of lead, hammered out until they are flexible. These sheets are affixed to the hull with small copper nails. Tack, tack, tack. Rows upon rows of copper heads glinting against the gray lead. This sheathing protects the wood from the shipworms, the teredo navalis, which bore into timber and honeycomb it until it crumbles. The Romans knew that to survive the sea, one must guard against the smallest of enemies. The application of the lead sheathing is another slow task. The sheets must overlap just so. The nails must be spaced evenly. It is a mosaic of metal, a protective skin hammered into place by hand, inch by inch, covering the vast belly of the ship. Now, imagine the smell of the waterproofing, pitch and wax. The seams between the planks are caulked with tow, fibers of hemp or flax driven into the gaps with a mallet and a caulking iron. Then, the hot pitch is poured over the seams. The pitch is black and viscous, bubbling in an iron cauldron over a fire. It smells of ancient forests, of tar and smoke. It is painted onto the wood, sealing it, turning the hull into a dark, uniform surface. The wax, sometimes mixed with the pitch or used on the upper works, adds another layer of protection, buffed to a dull sheen. The ship, sitting on the dry land, looks heavy and dormant, a sleeping beast waiting for the water. Inside the hold, the ribs of the ship are installed after the shell is built. This is the reverse of modern shipbuilding, where the frame is built first. Here, the internal framing is shaped to fit the existing shell. Large curved timbers of compass wood, wood that has grown with a natural curve, are fitted against the interior of the planking. They are bolted through, adding rigidity. The interior of the hold smells of raw wood and enclosed air. It is a dim, cavernous space, silent and waiting. The floor timbers are heavy, providing a flat surface for the cargo. Everything is overbuilt. Everything is solid. There is a sense of permanence in the construction. This ship is not meant for a single voyage. It is meant to sail for decades, to shuttle back and forth between Alexandria and Ostia, between Gades and Puteoli, year after year, carrying the weight of the empire in its belly. On the deck, the scene is one of sturdy functionality. The mainmast is a single, massive trunk of fir, stepped into a heavy keelson deep in the hull. It stands like a solitary tree in the center of the vessel. Raising it requires block and tackle, sheer legs, and the coordinated effort of many men. Once in place, it is stayed with heavy ropes of hemp. The rigging is simple but heavy. There are no complex arrays of sails here, just a large square mainsail, the Artemon, a smaller foresail raked forward over the bow, and perhaps a triangular topsail, the Cyparum, for light winds. The ropes are thick and rough to the touch. They smell of the tar used to preserve them. Every knot, every splice is a work of functional art, tied with the knowledge that a slip could mean disaster in a gale. But for now, in the shipyard, the ropes hang slack or are coiled neatly on the deck, waiting for the tension of the wind. The steering oars, the gubernacula, are massive paddles attached to the quarters of the ship, one on each side. They are not hinged rudders like we see on modern ships. They are large oars that rotate in a pivot, controlled by a tiller bar. The helmsman stands on a raised platform, moving these great levers with his arms and shoulders. The wood of the tiller is polished smooth by the sweat and friction of countless hands. The mechanism is simple, direct, and tactile. The pilot feels the water through the wood. He feels the resistance of the current, the slap of the waves against the blade. It is a physical connection between the man and the sea, mediated by the dense grain of the timber. Let us sit for a moment on the deck of this unfinished ship. The sounds of the shipyard drift up to us, the rasp of a file on metal, the rhythmic sawing of wood, the murmur of voices discussing measurements and fittings. It is a peaceful industry. There is no roar of engines, no beep of reversing trucks, just the sounds of human labor and natural materials interacting. The dust motes dance in the shafts of sunlight that pierce the unfinished rigging. The air is warm and still. We can run our hand along the gunwale, feeling the smoothness of the sanded wood, the slight stickiness of the resin. We are observing the creation of a vessel that is designed to be slow. These ships will not cut through the waves. They will push them aside. They will bob and roll, secure in their buoyancy, carrying their burdens with a plodding, undeniable persistence. As the construction nears completion, the focus shifts to the details of the loading mechanisms, but before the first sack of grain or the first amphora of wine can be brought aboard, the ship must be launched. This, too, is a slow process. Grease is applied to the slipway, animal fat, slippery and pungent. Wedges are driven under the keel to lift the weight off the blocks. The sound of the mallet striking the wedges is a sharp counterpoint to the lap of the water. Then, with a groan of timber and the shouting of the foreman, the great mass begins to slide. Gravity takes hold. The ship moves, gathering momentum, until the stern hits the water with a splash that sends ripples out across the harbor. The hull settles, finding its waterline. It bobs gently, no longer a creature of the land, but a creature of the sea. It is empty, riding high, exposing the copper heads and the lead sheathing to the air one last time before it is burdened with cargo. Now, floating at the quay, the ship waits. The gangplanks are lowered. They are heavy slabs of wood, with cleats nailed across them to provide grip for the porter's sandals. The connection is made between the stone of the harbor and the wood of the ship. This is the threshold over which thousands of tons of goods will pass. We are ready to look at the harbor itself, the complex static machine that serves the mobile machine of the ship. But first, we simply watch the empty ship rocking gently in the calm water of the harbor basin. Up and down, up and down. The mast traces a slow arc against the sky. The ropes tap quietly against the wood. It is a lullaby of potential, of a journey about to begin. But not yet. Not just yet. The quay itself is a marvel of static engineering, a contrast to the fluid nature of the sea it holds back. Beneath the sandals of the porters, the ground is solid, unyielding. This is not merely piled stone, it is opus cementicium, Roman concrete, mixed with pozzolana, a volcanic ash brought from the region around Puteoli. This concrete possesses a unique chemical property. It sets underwater. As the waves lick against the harbor walls, the concrete does not erode. It strengthens. It undergoes a slow chemical reaction with the salt water, binding tighter, becoming rock hard over centuries. We can look down at the waterline, where the dark gray of the concrete meets the green slurry of algae. Tiny barnacles cling to the rough surface, their shells sharp and white. The water rises and falls with the tide, a matter of inches in the Mediterranean, wetting the stone and then retreating, leaving a damp, dark band that glistens in the low sun. Behind the quay stand the Horia, the great warehouses. They are monumental brick structures, their walls thick and imposing. We approach one of these buildings. The brickwork is precise, rows of flat red bricks sandwiched between thick layers of mortar. Opus testicium. The repetition of the brick pattern is hypnotic to the eye. Red, gray, red, gray. Up and up the walls go. There are narrow slit windows high up, designed to let air circulate while keeping out the rain and the direct heat of the sun. The grain must be kept cool. The oil must be kept dark. Entering the warehouse, the temperature drops. It is dim inside, the air thick with the smell of dry dust and sacking. Your eyes take a moment to adjust from the brightness of the harbor. Rows of brick pillars stretch away into the darkness, supporting the vaulted ceiling. In this cool quiet, goods are stacked in immense piles. Sacks of wheat from Egypt, amphorae of wine from Gaul, jars of fish sauce, garum from Spain. They sit here in silence, waiting for the sakurai, the porters who will move them from this stasis to the belly of the ship. The movement of the sakuri is the pulse of the harbor. These men do not run. You cannot run with an 80-pound amphora on your shoulder. They walk with a specific gait, a shuffle that keeps the spine straight and the weight balanced. Watch one of them now. He wears a simple tunic, stained with sweat and dust. His legs are wrapped in fabric to protect against scrapes. He approaches a stack of amphorae. 2 other men help lift the jar onto his shoulder. There is a grunt of effort, a shifting of feet. The amphora settles. The porter adjusts his grip, feeling the rough terracotta against his neck. He takes a breath and begins to walk. Step, step, step. The rhythm is slow and heavy. He walks out of the warehouse, into the sunlight, across the stone quay, and up the gangplank. The wood of the plank bends slightly under the combined weight of the man and the burden. It creaks, a dull, protesting sound. He reaches the deck of the ship and descends into the hold. This is not a journey he makes once. He makes it 10 times, 20 times, 50 times a day. It is a loop, warehouse, quay, ship, warehouse, quay, ship, a human conveyor belt moving at the speed of a walking man. Let us pause to look at the object he is carrying, the amphora, specifically a Dressel 20, the standard container for olive oil from Baetica. It is a globular pot, heavy and thick-walled. It has 2 small handles on the neck. It is not beautiful in an artistic sense. It is purely functional. The bottom is not flat. It is pointed, a spike of solid clay. This might seem like a design flaw. You cannot set it down on a table, but for shipping, it is genius. We will see why in a moment. On the side of the amphora, there is writing. These are the tituli picti, painted inscriptions in black or red ink. Let's read one. It is a label, a manifest of the contents. It tells us the empty weight of the jar, the tear. It tells us the weight of the oil inside. It tells us the name of the merchant, the name of the estate where the olives were grown, and the name of the official who weighed it. 93 Roman pounds of oil. The ink is faded, absorbed into the porous clay, but the information remains. This is bureaucratic pottery. Every jar is accounted for. Every jar is a data point in the ledger of the empire. As the porter descends the ladder into the ship's hold, he enters a world of geometry. The hold is deep and smells of pine resin and the dunnage that lines the floor. The dunnage consists of brushwood, heather, or woven mats made of rushes. It provides a cushion between the hard wood of the ship's hull and the brittle clay of the amphorae. The porter lowers his burden. The pointed bottom of the amphora is thrust into the brushwood or the sand ballast at the bottom of the hold. It stands upright, held by the friction of the packing material. Then the next porter arrives. He places his amphora next to the first, and the next. They are packed tight, shoulder to shoulder. But here is the clever part, the next layer. The second layer of amphora is not placed directly on top of the first. Instead, the pointed bottom of the upper jar is slotted into the gap between the necks of the 4 jars below it. They interlock. The handles of the lower jars support the body of the upper jar. It creates a solid, honeycombed structure. It prevents the cargo from shifting as the ship rolls in the waves. The loading process is a puzzle being solved in slow motion. The stevedores, the men who arrange the cargo, must ensure the weight is distributed evenly. Too much weight on the port side, and the ship will list. Too much weight in the bow, and it will plow into the waves. They work with a quiet focus, shouting low instructions to one another. Move that one back. Tighten the wedge here. They use small wooden wedges and more brushwood to fill any gaps. The cargo must become part of the ship. It must not move. A shifting cargo in a storm is a death sentence. If the cargo is grain, the process is different but equally repetitive. The grain might be carried in sacks, heavy burlap bags that leave a trail of dust in the air, or it might be poured loose into the hold. Imagine the sound of the grain being poured. A dry, rushing hiss, like water but coarser. Millions of kernels of wheat sliding over one another. It piles up in cones, then spreads out, filling the spaces between the ribs of the ship. The dust hangs in the shafts of light, a golden haze that coats the skin and eyelashes of the workers. They cough quietly, a dry hacking sound, as they shovel the grain level. On the quay, there is a man sitting at a small folding table. He is the mensor, the measurer. He holds a wax tablet and a stylus. Every time a porter passes with a sack or an amphora, the mensor makes a mark. Or perhaps he uses a system of tesserae, small tokens. A porter drops a token into a bowl as he passes. Clink, clink, clink. At the end of the day, the tokens are counted. The tally is recorded. The bureaucracy of Rome is present even here, in the dust and the sweat. The scratching of the stylus on the wax is a tiny, precise sound amidst the heavy thuds of the loading. We watch the waterline of the ship. Hours pass. The sun moves across the sky, changing the shadows on the deck from long and sharp to short and deep, and then long again. As the cargo fills the hold, the ship settles lower. The lead sheathing, which was exposed to the air, slowly disappears beneath the surface. Inch by inch, the water climbs the hull. The ship becomes heavier, more stable. It sits deep in the water, anchored by the weight of the harvest. The buoyant, bobbing motion we saw earlier is gone. Now the movement is sluggish and dampened. The ship resists the water. It is fully laden. The sounds of the harbor change as evening approaches. The work slows down. The shadows of the cranes lengthen across the water. Ah, the cranes. We have not looked at them closely yet. The polyspaston, a heavy lifting machine powered by human muscle. It stands on the dock like a skeletal giant. It is made of two large timber beams joined at the top in an A-frame, held in place by stay ropes anchored to the ground. At the top, there is a block with multiple pulleys. At the bottom, a windlass, a horizontal drum with hand spikes sticking out like the spokes of a wheel. Let us watch the crane in action before the light fails. A net of heavy stone blocks is being lifted for ballast. 4 men stand at the windlass. They lean their weight against the hand spikes. They push. The drum turns. The rope tightens. The pulleys at the top squeak, a high-pitched complaint of wood on wood, lubricated with animal fat. The load rises. Slowly. Very slowly. There is no engine, only the mechanical advantage of the pulleys and the leverage of the men. They walk in a circle, pushing the capstan, or they step on the treads of a great tread wheel, climbing an endless staircase that goes nowhere. Thud, thud, thud. The wheel turns. The rope coils around the drum. The weight hangs suspended, swaying slightly in the evening breeze. The loading continues until the waterline reaches the specific mark known to the captain. The final checks are made. The hatch covers are brought out. They are heavy wooden grates or solid planks fitted over the opening of the hold. They are covered with tarpaulins, canvas treated with wax and tar to make them watertight. Ropes are lashed over the covers, tied down to cleats on the deck. The cargo is sealed away. It is now a secret, hidden beneath the feet of the sailors, not to be seen again until the ship reaches Ostia or Puteoli weeks from now. The sun dips below the horizon. The work stops. The porters rub their shoulders and head towards the taverns near the harbor gate. The noise of the docks fades into a low murmur of voices and the lapping of the water. Lanterns are lit on the sterns of the ships, small points of orange fire reflecting in the dark water. The ship is ready. It is a heavy, floating warehouse, waiting for the wind. The smell of the harbor changes. The dust settles, and the cool, damp scent of the sea takes over. We sit on the edge of the quay, legs dangling over the side, listening to the water slapping against the stone and the hull of the laden ship. Slap, slap, pause, slap. It is the heartbeat of the coast. We have built the ship, and we have loaded the ship. But a ship is nothing without the people who live upon it and the navigation that guides it. The deck is quiet now, but soon it will be the stage for a very specific, confined society. The hierarchy of the crew, the food they eat, the watches they keep, and the stars they follow. But for now, we rest in the gathering dark, watching the silhouette of the mast against the first stars. Night on the harbor is not truly silent, but the quality of the sound is different. It is muffled, intimate. The clamor of the day, the shouts, the hammers, the creaking cranes, is replaced by the small, localized sounds of the ships at rest. A rope tapping against a mast, a plank groaning as the temperature drops, the soft splash of a fish jumping near the surface. We are still on the quay, but our attention shifts now to the crew who are settling in for the voyage. They are not a faceless mass, They are a small, hierarchical community, bound by the wooden walls of the ship. The captain, the Magister Navis, is the ultimate authority. He is often the owner of the ship, or the agent of the owner. His quarters are in the stern, a small cabin or a sheltered area under the cheniscus, the curved tail of the ship. It is not luxurious. A bunk built into the curvature of the hull, a small table, a lamp. The wood here is polished, perhaps inlaid with a bit of ivory or citrus wood if the owner is wealthy. The magister deals with the business, the manifest, the taxes, the port fees. He holds the keys to the strongbox. He worries about the profit margins. But the man who actually sails the ship, the one who knows the wind and the stars, is the gubernator, the helmsman. His station is the quarterdeck, near the great steering oars. He sleeps near his post, wrapped in a heavy wool cloak, the pennola. His knowledge is not written in ledgers but stored in his memory. He knows the shape of the headlands, the color of the water where the shoals lie, the smell of the wind before a storm. He is the mind of the ship, while the magister is the will. Then there is the prorius, the lookout. His domain is the prow, the front of the ship. He watches the water ahead. He is the eyes. He signals back to the gubernator with hand gestures or shouts. Log ahead, shoal water. During the day, he watches the color of the sea. At night, he listens for the sound of breakers. He sleeps in the bow, curled up on a coil of rope or a mat. And the sailors, the naughty, they are the hands. Their life is one of physical labor and exposed elements. They do not have cabins. They sleep on the deck, finding shelter wherever they can, behind the deck house, under the overhang of the gunwales, or simply in the open air when the weather is fair. A tent, a simple canvas awning, might be rigged up over the main deck at night to keep the dew off, but essentially, they live outside. Their world is the deck planks, the ropes, and the sky. Let's watch them prepare their evening meal. A fire on a wooden ship is a terrifying thing, so the cooking is done with extreme caution. There is a hearth box, a foculus, on the deck. It is a box made of tiles or lined with brick, filled with sand or ash. A small charcoal fire burns within it. The charcoal glows orange, a warm center in the cool night air. A pot sits on a tripod over the coals. The smell of the food drifts across the deck. It is simple fare. Pulse, a grain porridge made of emmer wheat, perhaps flavored with a bit of salt pork or some vegetables, or maybe a stew of lentils. They eat from wooden bowls, using spoons or pieces of hardtack bread to scoop up the food. The hardtack, bucculatum, is baked twice to remove all moisture. It is hard as a rock. To eat it, you must dip it in wine or water or soup to soften it. Crunch, crunch. The sound of chewing is loud in the quiet. They drink posca, a mixture of water and sour wine or vinegar. It is thirst-quenching and kills bacteria in the stored water. It tastes sharp and acidic, a taste that every Roman soldier and sailor knows intimately. As they eat, they talk. The conversation is low, murmured. They talk of the winds, of the omens observed during the loading, of the taverns in the last port. Their voices are rough, shaped by shouting over the wind. They play dice games on the deck planks, the little bone cubes clicking as they roll. Tesserae. The stakes are small, a coin, a ration of wine, a chore duty. The lantern light flickers on their faces, highlighting the weather-beaten skin, the squint lines around the eyes. The ship is provisioned for weeks. In the hold, separate from the cargo, are the ship's stores. Large dolia, massive earthenware jars fixed into the deck, hold the fresh water. But water goes bad. It grows algae. It tastes stale. So they also carry wine, oil, grain, dried meat, cheese, and garlic. Garlic is essential. It is believed to give strength and ward off illness. Braids of garlic hang from the beams in the galley area, their papery skins rustling when the ship moves. Morning comes. The departure. It is not a sudden sprint. It is a slow untethering. The gubernator checks the wind. It is blowing from the northeast, a favorable breeze for leaving the harbor. He nods to the magister. The order is given. The mooring lines are cast off. Splash. The ropes are hauled in, wet and dripping, coiled quickly on the deck. The ship drifts away from the quay, pushed gently by poles until it is clear of the other vessels. Now, the work begins. Raise the Artemon. The small foresail is unfurled. It catches the breeze, pulling the bow around. The ship begins to move under its own power. Then, the main event. Hoist the mainsail. The sailors man the halyards. They pull in unison. Heave, heave. The heavy yard, the horizontal beam that holds the sail, rises up the mast. The wood creaks under the strain. The sail, a massive square of flax canvas, is bundled up against the yard. Once the yard is hoisted and secured, the brails, the ropes that bundle the sail, are released. Whoosh. The sail drops. It fills with a snap. The canvas goes taut, curving into a belly shape. The ship shudders as it takes the load. The water begins to hiss along the hull. We are moving. We are leaving the static world of stone and concrete and entering the fluid world of wind and wave. The harbor mouth approaches. The lighthouse, the Pharos, stands at the entrance, a tall tower with smoke drifting from its summit. We pass it slowly. The open sea lies ahead. The transition from harbor chop to ocean swell is felt in the feet. The deck begins to lift and fall in a longer, slower rhythm. Up and down, up and down. The horizon expands. The land falls behind, becoming a gray smudge. We are in the realm of the gubernator. Now, navigation in the Roman world is not about charts and compasses. They have neither. It is about observation and memory. It is about reading the environment. During the day, the sun is the guide. At noon, the sun is due south in the northern hemisphere. The gubernator watches the shadow of the mast. He knows the time of year. He knows where the sun should be. He steers by keeping the sun in a specific position relative to the ship. But what if it is cloudy? Then he reads the waves. The swell usually comes from a consistent direction, driven by the prevailing winds. If the wind shifts, the swell takes time to change. He feels the angle of the roll. He watches the flight of birds. Seabirds fly out to sea in the morning to fish and return to land in the evening. Following them can lead you to land. He watches the color of the water. Dark blue means deep water. Green means shallower water or sand. White patches mean rocks or breaking waves. At night, the stars are the map. The gubernator stands at the tiller, looking up. He finds septentrions, the 7 oxen, what we call the Big Dipper or the plow. He uses it to find the pole star, the one star that does not move. This gives him north. He knows the constellations, Orion, the Pleiades, Cassiopeia. He knows their rising and setting times. They are his clock and his compass. He steers the ship so that a certain star hangs in the rigging at a certain height. It is a geometry of light and wood. The ship moves at a walking pace, maybe 4 or 5 knots. It is not fast. It is a slow, steady progress. The wake trails behind, a path of white foam that quickly fades into the blue. The only sounds are the wind in the rigging, a low, constant hum, and the water rushing past the hull. Occasionally, the timber groans as the ship flexes. It is a living thing, breathing with the sea. Life on board settles into a routine. The watches are divided. The Romans divide the night into 4 watches, vigiliae, each about 3 hours long. The sand glass, the clepsydra, marks the time. A sailor watches the sand trickle from the upper bulb to the lower. It is a quiet, mesmerizing sight, the steady flow of grains. When the top is empty, he turns it over. Watch change. The sleepy sailors from the previous watch stumble to their resting places while the fresh crew takes their stations. There is a lot of waiting, waiting for the wind, waiting for the destination. To pass the time, sailors do maintenance. They splice ropes, they mend sails, they scrape the deck. There is always something to scrape or clean. The deck planks must be scrubbed with seawater and sand. Scour, scour, scour. The sound is gritty and repetitive. The wood becomes white and smooth from years of this treatment. Sometimes the wind dies. The doldrums. The sail hangs limp, flapping uselessly against the mast. The ship loses its way, drifting aimlessly. The silence is profound. The sun beats down on the deck. The pitch in the seams softens and becomes sticky. The air is hot and still. The sailors seek shade. They wait. This is the patience of the ancient mariner. You cannot force the wind. You can only wait for it. They look at the horizon, searching for the cat's paw, the dark ripple on the water that indicates a breeze. Or the wind blows too hard. A gale. The sky turns dark. The waves grow steep. The order is given to lower the yard, to reduce sail. Lower away. The heavy yard comes down. The ship rolls violently. The cargo in the hold, carefully packed, groans as it strains against the hull. The sailors are soaked with spray. They work with grim determination. They tie down anything loose. They pray to Neptune, to Isis, to the Dioscuri. They pour a libation of wine into the sea, a small cup of red wine, tossed into the gray, churning foam, a plea for safety. But let us return to the calm weather, the steady progress. We are sailing along the coast of Italy, heading south. We see the land as a distant profile of mountains and hills. We pass other ships, a small fishing boat, a scaffa, bobbing in the swell. The fishermen wave, we wave back. A fast military Liburnian, with its banks of oars flashing in the sun, cuts across our path. It is sleek and dangerous, a wolf among the sheep. We plod on, heavy and slow. The ship carries not just cargo and crew, but passengers as well. There are no passenger cabins. Travelers simply pay the captain for passage and find a spot on the deck. They bring their own food, their own bedding, their own servants. A wealthy merchant might set up a small tent on the aft deck. A philosopher might sit on a coil of rope, reading a scroll. A family might huddle together near the mast. They are temporary residents of this wooden island. They endure the elements, the seasickness, the boredom. They watch the sea, hour after hour, the endless repetition of the waves. Let's imagine sitting with them. The sun is setting again. The sky is a gradient of violet, orange, and red. The sea reflects these colors, turning into a sheet of hammered copper. The wind cools. We wrap our cloaks tighter. The rhythm of the ship is soothing. Rock, rock, rock. It is a cradle. The worries of the land, the debts, the politics, the noise, seem very far away. There is only the ship, the sea, and the sky. We are approaching a new logistical challenge. We are not just sailing. We are transporting goods that must be kept in specific conditions. The grain must not get wet. The animals, if we are carrying them, must be watered. The complexity of the cargo management at sea is our next focus. But for now, we watch the first star appear, low on the horizon, blinking through the atmospheric haze. The gubernator sees it. He adjusts the tiller slightly. The ship corrects its course. We sail on into the night. The darkness of the open sea is absolute. Without the light pollution of the modern world, the boundary between the black water and the black sky is often lost, visible only where the stars stop and the void begins. In this void, the ship is a tiny, self-contained world, and like any world, it requires constant maintenance to survive. While the passengers sleep and the watch stands silent at the rail, deep in the bowels of the ship, a never-ending battle is being fought. The battle against the water. Every wooden ship leaks. It is a fact of maritime life. As the hull flexes in the waves, the caulking shifts, the wood expands and contracts, and the sea finds its way in. It trickles down the inside of the ribs, collecting in the lowest part of the hull, the centina, the bilge. This water is dark, foul-smelling, and dangerous. If it rises too high, it rots the cargo. If it rises higher still, it destabilizes the ship. So, it must be removed. Listen to the sound of the antlia, the bilge pump. It is a rhythmic, mechanical groan that emanates from the waist of the ship. On a large grain carrier, this might be a chain pump or an Archimedes screw. Let us visualize the screw. It is a long wooden cylinder encased in pitch-covered leather, sitting at an angle inside a pipe. Inside the cylinder is a spiraling blade of wood or copper. At the top, on the deck, a sailor turns a crank. Crank, turn, crank, turn. It is a monotonous motion. The sailor leans into the handle, using the weight of his body to rotate the screw. Down below, the spiral catches the foul water and carries it up the tube, fighting gravity with simple geometry. At the top, the water spills out of a spout and runs across the deck to the scuppers, where it drains back into the sea. Splash, splash, splash. The water is black and oily. It smells of stagnant brine and rot. This task is never finished. The pump must be manned continuously or at regular intervals, depending on the leakiness of the vessel. It is the heartbeat of the ship's survival, a pulse of labor that keeps the ocean on the outside. For the passengers trying to sleep on the deck, the sound of the pump is a constant lullaby. It reminds them that they are floating over a depth they cannot comprehend. They lie on their pallets, wrapped in wool, feeling the vibration of the pump through the planks. The deck is hard. The ship rolls. One shoulder presses into the wood, then the other. They slide slightly with each roll. Sleep comes in shallow drifts, broken by the changing of the watch or the flap of a sail. Morning brings a change in the sensory landscape. The sun burns off the mist. The sea turns a deep, bruised purple, then a vibrant blue. The passengers wake, stiff and damp. They shake out their cloaks. They line up at the rail to wash their faces with seawater brought up in buckets. The salt stings the eyes but wakes the mind. Routine reasserts itself. Now, consider the cargo of animals. A merchant ship often carries more than just static goods. Perhaps there are horses for the cavalry in Gaul, or exotic beasts for the games in Rome, or simply livestock for food. These animals live in the forward hold or in stalls erected on the deck. Their care is a logistical loop of its own. They must be watered. The water must be hauled up from the dolia in the hold, bucket after bucket. The animals are nervous. They smell the sea, which is alien to them. They brace their legs against the rolling of the deck. A groom, a specialized slave, moves among them. He speaks in low, soothing tones. He checks their hooves. He feeds them hay that was brought on board in bales. The smell of the stable mixes with the smell of the salt spray. It is a strange, earthy pocket of farm life floating in the middle of the Mediterranean. Cleaning the stalls is a necessity. The manure must be shoveled up and tossed overboard. Shovel, lift, toss. The waste hits the water and dissolves. leaving a temporary stain in the wake. The groom works methodically, oblivious to the grandeur of the ocean, focused only on the hygiene of his charges. If the animals get sick, the sickness can spread. If they panic, they can damage the ship. So he keeps them calm. He keeps them clean. He is a farmer at sea. Meanwhile, the magister is concerned with the grain. Wheat is a living thing. It breathes. If it gets damp, it sprouts. If it gets too hot, it ferments. Spontaneous combustion is a real fear. Deep in the hold, heat can build up in the center of the grain pile. The magister or his assistants perform inspections. They climb down into the hold, walking carefully over the shifting mounds of grain. They thrust long wooden probes into the wheat. They pull them out and feel the tip. Is it warm? Is it damp? They smell the air. Does it smell sweet and dry like a summer field? Or does it smell sour, like old beer? If they find a hot spot, the grain must be turned. Men with wooden shovels must move the wheat, aerating it, cooling it down. It is backbreaking work in a confined space, surrounded by dust that coats the lungs. But it must be done to save the profit. Every grain is money. Every grain is bread for the mob in Rome. On the deck, the passengers have their own routines to kill the time. Boredom is the primary emotion of a long sea voyage. There is no scenery to watch, only the changing texture of the water. They play games. Latruncoli, a strategy game similar to chess or checkers, mercenaries. They scratch a grid onto the deck planks or use a portable board. They move small stones or glass counters. Click, click, click. I take your piece. You are trapped. They bet on the outcome. They bet on anything. How many seabirds will we see today? When will the wind change? Some read. Scrolls of papyrus are unrolled carefully, shielding them from the spray. A history by Livy. A poem by Virgil. They read aloud to one another, their voices small against the wind. Arms and the man I sing. The words float away, carried off by the breeze. Others simply stare. The 1,000-mile stare. They watch the wake. They watch the clouds. They enter a trance state, hypnotized by the repetitive motion of the vessel. This is the quiet time of the ancient world, a suspension of life between 2 points. Lunch is cold. The fire in the hearth box is kept low or extinguished during the heat of the day to save charcoal. Lunch is bread, cheese, olives, and dried figs. The food is dry and salty. You chew slowly. You drink your watered wine. You wipe your hands on your tunic. There is a communal aspect to it. People share their supplies. Try this cheese from Parma. Have some of this garum. The sharing of food builds a temporary bond among the travelers. As the afternoon wears on, the gubernator begins a new task. We are approaching a coastline, or perhaps a shallow bank. We cannot see the bottom, but we must know the depth. He calls for the sounding lead. This is a bell-shaped weight of lead attached to a long marked line. The base of the lead has a hollow indentation. The sailor prepares the lead. He takes a lump of tallow, animal fat, and presses it into the hollow at the base. This is the arming of the lead. He walks to the bow, the prora. He coils the line in his hand. He swings the lead back and forth to build momentum. Then he releases it. Splash! The lead flies forward, unspooling the line. It hits the water well ahead of the ship. The sailor lets the line run through his fingers, counting the knots or the colored rags tied at intervals. The line goes slack. Bottom! He calls out. He hauls the line in, hand over hand. It is wet and heavy. When the lead comes up, he examines the tallow at the base. Stuck to the fat are particles from the seafloor. Sand, mud, shells, gravel. The gubernator examines the sample. Gray sand means one location. Red mud means another. Broken shells mean a specific bank. The seafloor is a map, and the sounding lead is the way to read it. 20 fathoms, sand and shell. The course is adjusted. The ship is safe. This process is repeated every few minutes as they near the danger. Swing, splash, count, haul, inspect. It is a slow, rhythmic probing of the unseen world beneath the keel. The sun begins to lower again. The cycle continues. But look, on the horizon, a shape, not a cloud. It is hard and angular. A sail? No, an island, land. The mood on the deck changes instantly. The lethargy vanishes. Passengers stand up, shielding their eyes. Fingers point. Terra! Land. It is a waypoint, a marker. It confirms that we are where we think we are. It is a psychological anchor. We are not stopping there. We are passing by. But the sight of land brings a renewed focus to the navigation. The gubernator watches the headland, lining it up with a distant peak to check his bearing. The sailors trim the sails, tightening the sheets to squeeze a little more speed out of the wind. They want to pass the headland before dark. The ship leans slightly as it changes course. The wake curves. The water creates a different sound as it hits the rudder at a new angle. We are threading the needle between the open sea and the coastal hazards. The skills of the frontier, the quiet competence of the crew, are on full display here. No one is shouting. No one is running. They simply move the ropes, turn the handles, and watch the water. It is a professional silence. As we sail past the island, we can see the details of the shore. A small fishing village. Nets drying on the beach. Smoke rising from a charcoal burner's fire in the woods. It is a glimpse of another life, a stationary life, while we continue our mobile existence. The people on the shore might look up and see our white sail, a tiny speck moving against the blue. To them, we are the mystery. To us, they are the scenery. The island falls astern. The sun touches the water. The routine of the evening begins again. The fire is lit. The porridge is cooked. The lamps are trimmed. But tonight, the air feels different. We are closer to our destination. The smell of the open ocean is mixed with the scent of land, pine resin, earth, and wood smoke blowing off the shore. The journey is measuring out its length, one watch at a time. We settle down for another night on the hard wood. The stars emerge, the same stars as last night, but shifted slightly in the sky. The universe turns, and we turn with it, carried by a basket of wood and nails across the surface of the deep. The arrival at the destination is not marked by a sudden stop, but by a change in the texture of the water. We are approaching the mouth of the Tiber, the gateway to Rome. The deep, crystalline blue of the Tyrrhenian Sea begins to streak with yellow and brown. It is the silt, the soil of the Apennines washed down by the river, clouding the clarity of the ocean. The waves change character. They become shorter, chopping against the current of the river pushing out to sea. The ship slows, feeling the resistance of the fresh water meeting the salt. Ahead, the great lighthouse of Portus, the artificial harbor built by the emperors, rises like a man-made mountain. It is modeled on the Pharos of Alexandria. It is a stack of diminishing tiers, crowned with a fire that burns day and night. But in the daylight, it is a gray pillar of stone, a marker of civilization. We are leaving the wild frontier of the open sea and entering the controlled industrial machine of the imperial supply chain. As we near the harbor entrance, the large square sail is brailed up. The canvas is bundled against the yard, cutting off the power of the wind. The ship loses momentum. Now we see the lanunculi, the harbor boats. These are small, sturdy rowing boats that act as tugs. They approach us, their oars dipping in unison. A heavy hawser is thrown from our bow. The men in the tugboat catch it and secure it to a bit in their stern. They begin to row, heave, splash, heave, splash. The tow rope goes taut, dripping water. Our great merchant ship, stripped of its wind power, is now a helpless giant being led by the nose. We glide slowly between the massive moles, the breakwaters formed by sinking concrete-filled barges. The noise of the open sea, the wind and the crashing waves, is suddenly cut off. We enter the stillness of the outer harbor. The water here is flat, oily, and crowded. Ships are everywhere. Grain ships from Alexandria, oil ships from Spain, marble carriers from Greece. They sit at anchor or are moored to the quays, a forest of masts and spars. We are towed through the outer basin and into the inner sanctuary, the hexagonal basin of Trajan. The geometry here is imposing. 6 perfectly straight sides, lined with numbered warehouses and mooring rings. The architecture commands the water. The tugboat guides us to our assigned berth. The orders are shouted, echoing off the stone walls of the warehouses. Fend off! Sailors hang fenders, woven mats or bundles of rope, over the side to protect the hull from grinding against the quay. We slide in. The wood touches the stone with a gentle bump. Mooring lines are thrown. They are caught by the saburari, the dock workers. The lines are looped over iron bollards and hauled tight. The ship stops. It is fast. The journey of the hull is over. But the journey of the cargo is only half done. The bureaucracy begins immediately. The portatores, the customs officials, board the ship. They wear clean tunics and carry tablets. They break the seals on the hatch covers. They inspect the manifest. They are looking for contraband, checking that the taxes have been paid. It is a slow, tedious process of counting and verifying. The captain argues about a discrepancy in the weight. The official points to the ledger. The crew waits. The passengers gather their belongings and disembark, stepping onto the solid earth with wobbly sea legs, the ground feeling like it is swaying beneath them. Once the paperwork is stamped, the unloading begins. It is the reverse of the loading, but with a new complication: the river. Our deep-draft sea ship cannot sail up the Tiber to Rome. It draws too much water. It would run aground. The cargo must be transshipped. It must be moved from the navis honoraria, the sea ship, to the navis cauticaria, the river barge. The naves caudicariae are ugly, functional vessels. They are flat-bottomed, wide, and shallow. They have no keel to speak of. They are built for capacity, not for speed or stability in waves. They pull alongside the sea ship, or the cargo is moved across the quay. Let us watch the transfer of the grain. It is not poured loose this time. It is measured into modii, standardized measures, and then poured into sacks. The saccari are here too, their shoulders padded. They carry the sacks from the hold of the sea ship, across a gangplank, and down into the barge. The barge sits low in the water. As it fills, it sinks lower, until the gunwales are only a foot or so above the brown water of the harbor. The transfer of marble or heavy stone columns is a spectacle of slow-motion physics. The cranes are employed again. The heavy blocks are lifted from the hold, swinging perilously in the air, and then lowered with infinite care onto the reinforced deck of the barge. If a block is dropped, it will smash through the bottom of the barge and sink it instantly. The foreman watches with eagle eyes. Hand signals guide the winch operators. Down, down, stop. The rope goes slack. The barge shudders under the new weight. This process takes days. The harbor is a hive of activity, but it is a rhythmic activity. the creaking of the cranes, the chant of the porters, the scratch of the tallies. It goes on from dawn until dusk. But finally, the sea ship is empty. It rides high and light, exposing its weed-covered hull. The barge, the Katacaria, is full. It is ready for the trip up the Tiber. This is the most arduous part of the journey. The Tiber flows into the sea. To get to Rome, the barges must go against the current. They cannot sail. The river winds too much, and the wind is unreliable. They cannot row. The current is too strong for oars to be efficient for such heavy loads. They must be towed. Enter the Heltsiari, the towmen, or the oxen teams. For heavy grain barges, oxen are preferred. The barge moves to the river mouth. A long, thick rope, the Helsiaria, is attached to the mast of the barge. The mast is short and stubby, placed forward specifically for towing. The rope is paid out, reaching the riverbank. On the bank, there is a dedicated road, the towpath. It is a beaten track of dirt and stone, worn smooth by centuries of hooves and feet. The oxen are yoked in pairs. Heavy wooden yokes rest on their necks. The rope is hitched to the team. The driver, the agasso, cracks his whip, not to hit the animals, but to signal them. A sharp crack in the air. The oxen lean into the yoke. The leather creaks. The muscles ripple under their skin. They step forward. The rope lifts out of the water, dripping, and pulls taut. The barge, fighting the current, begins to move upstream. The pace is incredibly slow, a steady, plodding walk. Step, step, step. The oxen lower their heads, their breath steaming in the morning air. The barge moves at perhaps 2 miles an hour. It is a battle against the relentless flow of the river. The water swirls brown and angry around the blunt bow of the barge, piling up in a small bow wave. The barge captain stands at the stern, manning a massive steering oar. He must keep the barge in the channel, away from the shallows, and away from the bank, so the rope doesn't snag. The towpath is a zone of constant friction. The rope rubs against the bushes, against the stones. Sometimes, on sharp bends, the rope pulls the barge towards the bank. The captain must shout, steering hard against the pull. "Pull! Keep her straight!" The driver on the bank shouts back, urging the oxen on. It is a silent struggle of leverage. The geometry of the tow, the force of the oxen pulling forward and inward, the force of the rudder pushing outward, the force of the river pushing back. All these forces must balance for the boat to move up the river. We walk alongside the oxen. The sound is hypnotic. The crunch of hooves on gravel, the rhythmic jingle of the harness, the splashing of the water, the breathing of the animals. Ha, ha. The flies buzz around their eyes. The driver walks with a steady, loping stride, a stick in his hand. He knows every bend of the river, every muddy patch on the path. There are traffic jams on the river. The Tiber is a two-way street. Empty barges are coming down from Rome, carried swiftly by the current, guided by long oars. They sweep past us, the crews shouting greetings or insults. "Make way! Watch your rope!" When two towed barges meet, one must stop and lower its rope to let the other pass over it. It is a slow dance of yielding and proceeding. We pass through the countryside. The noise of the harbor fades. We see villas with their terracotta roofs nestled among umbrella pines. We see vineyards sloping down to the river. We see fishermen casting nets from the reeds. To them, the passing of the barge is as common as the passing of the sun. It is just another load of wheat for the city. The journey up the river takes about 3 days. 3 days of walking, 3 days of pulling. At night, the barges tie up to the bank. The oxen are unhitched and fed. The fires are lit. The river murmurs against the hull, a darker sound than the sea. The mosquitoes are thick here. The crew sleeps under nets or in the smoke of the fire to keep them away. The next morning, the ritual begins again. Yoke the oxen. Attach the rope. Push off from the bank. Hup! Hup! The slow grind upstream continues. The landscape changes slowly. The fields give way to more density. Brick factories, potteries, small settlements. We are entering the orbit of the metropolis. The river becomes more polluted, more crowded. We see the katakari, the small boatmen who ferry passengers across the river or carry small loads. They dart between the heavy barges like water beetles. We see timbers floating down from the mountains, guided by men with long poles, destined for the building sites of the capital. The towpath itself requires maintenance. If a tree falls across it, the traffic stops. If the bank collapses, the traffic stops. We pass a gang of slaves repairing the path, dumping baskets of gravel into a muddy rut. They stand back to let the oxen pass. They watch with dull eyes. The flow of goods cannot stop. The city must eat. As we round the final bend, the air changes. It smells of wood smoke, cooking, sewage, and humanity. A dull roar reaches our ears, a constant background hum. It is the sound of 1,000,000 people. Rome, the skyline appears, not the white marble fantasy of the movies, but a chaotic jumble of brick tenements, insulae, rising 5 or 6 stories high, leaning over the narrow streets. The temples on the hills stand out, their gilded roofs catching the sun. But down here by the river, it is a canyon of brick and wood. We are approaching the Emporium, the great river port of Rome. The banks are lined with stone quays for miles. The chaos here makes Ostia look organized. This is the belly of the beast. The barge captain steers towards a designated unloading spot. The oxen are halted. The rope goes slack. The barge drifts in, its momentum spent. It bumps against the travertine embankment. The journey of the water is over. The barge is tied up. The oxen are led away to a stable to rest. They are tired, their heads hanging low. The barge sits there, a wooden tray filled with the harvest of Egypt. It waits for the next stage, the final lifting. We sit on the quay at the Emporium. The noise is overwhelming, but if we focus, we can find the rhythm within it. The slap of water against the stone, the thud of sacks, the creak of the cranes. It is the same rhythm we heard in the forest where the trees were cut, in the shipyard where the planks were bent, in the harbor where the ship was loaded. It is the rhythm of work, the rhythm of survival. We watch the river flow past, brown and heavy. It carries the waste of the city out to the sea, while the barges carry the life of the world into the city. A continuous loop, a circulatory system of wood and water. We are stationary now, but the movement never really stops. It just changes form. We look at the sacks of grain in the barge. Soon they will be bread. Soon they will be eaten. But for this moment, they are just weight. Resting weight. We have followed them from the field to the city. We have seen the labor, the patience, the quiet skills that brought them here. And now, under the smoky sky of Rome, we can rest too. We can watch the river slide by, endless and indifferent. The Emporium is not merely a dock. It is a machine for digestion. Rome consumes, and this stretch of the riverbank is the mouth. The pavement here is paved with great slabs of travertine, white stone that has been polished by the feet of millions of workers and the iron rims of countless carts. It stretches for a mile along the Aventine Hill, a long, flat stage for the drama of logistics. We watch the unloading of the olive oil. This is a specific, ritualized process. The amphorae that traveled from the groves of Spain that were loaded in the heat of Baetica that survived the rolling of the sea and the slow tow up the Tiber have reached their final destination. But they will not go further. The Dressel 20 amphora is a single-use container. It is heavy, thick-walled, and once the oil has soaked into its porous clay, it cannot be cleaned effectively. It becomes rancid. It becomes waste. So, the oil must be decanted. We see men tipping the great globular jars. The oil, thick and golden green, glugs out into smaller containers, into skins or household jugs, or into vast vats in the warehouses. Glug, glug, glug. The sound is viscous and heavy. The air smells intensely of olives, a sharp, grassy scent that overpowers the river smell. Once empty, the amphora is useless. It is trash. But in Rome, even trash is managed with engineering precision. We turn our eyes away from the river, towards the land, and we see a hill rising behind the warehouses. It is not a natural hill. It is Monte Testaccio, the hill of shards. Let us walk towards it. The ground beneath our feet changes from stone to a crunching gravel, but it is not stone gravel. It is terracotta. We are walking on the dust of broken pots. The hill looms above us, 35 meters high, a man-made mountain composed entirely of broken amphorae. 50 million jars. It is a monument to appetite. We watch the disposal teams. They are not simply throwing the shards onto a pile. That would be chaotic. The pile would collapse. No, they are building the hill. They carry the empty amphorae up the winding paths. At the designated spot, they break them. Crack. The sound of a hammer hitting fired clay. A sharp, dry report. The jar shatters into large curved fragments. The workers take these fragments and stack them. They nest the curved sherds inside one another, like stacking spoons. They lay them in precise rows, creating a stable, terraced structure. It is masonry without mortar. It is a puzzle of waste. They build retaining walls out of the necks and handles, the strongest parts of the jar. As they lay the shards, they sprinkle white powder over them. Lime, quicklime. It creates a small cloud of white dust that settles on the orange clay. The lime is there to neutralize the smell of the rancid oil that clings to the sherds. It eats away the organic residue. Without it, this hill would smell like a rotting kitchen. With it, it smells only of dust and dry earth. We stand on the side of this artificial mountain. The view is singular. We are standing on history, quite literally. Every shard beneath our sandals represents a transaction, a voyage, a harvest. We pick up a piece. It is heavy, rough to the touch. We can still see part of a stamp on the handle, a manufacturer's mark, a ghost of a business from 200 years ago. We place it back. It fits into the matrix of the hill. It belongs to the pile. Descending from the hill, we enter the Horea Galbana. This is one of the great warehouse complexes that line the river. It is a city within a city. We pass through a heavy archway guarded by custodes, watchmen who sit on stools, eyeing everyone who enters. The walls are high and windowless on the outside, a fortress against theft and fire. Inside, it is a labyrinth of order. The complex is organized around large open courtyards. These courtyards act as light wells and ventilation shafts. The ground is paved with opus spicatum, bricks laid in a herringbone pattern. This pattern is not just decorative. It provides grip for the carts and is extremely durable. Around the courtyards are the storage rooms, the celli, hundreds of them. We walk down a long colonnade, the shade cooling our skin. The columns are made of brick, coated in stucco. The rhythm of the columns is soothing. Shadow, light, shadow, light. We peek into one of the rooms. It is filled with sacks of grain. They are stacked to the ceiling. The room is designed with a raised floor, a suspensura, to allow air to circulate underneath and keep the damp away. The walls are lined with pitch. Every precaution is taken. The wealth of the empire is not gold. It is this. It is calories. The silence in the Horea is heavy. It is a library of food. The only sound is the scratching of a stylus. A clerk, a slave with a shaved head and a tunic, is checking the inventory. He walks from room to room, counting. He has a ring of keys on his belt. The jingle of the keys is the only music here. He unlocks a door, checks the seals on the sacks, makes a mark on his tablet, and locks the door again. Click, turn, thud. The locking mechanisms are ingenious. Romans loved locks. We see complex iron padlocks, keys with intricate teeth designed to lift tumblers. There are also seals made of lead or clay, impressed with a signet ring. If the seal is broken, someone answers for it. The accountability is absolute. We leave the warehouse and step back out into the bustle of the emporium. The goods have arrived, they have been stored, and now they must be distributed. We are witnessing the cura annoni, the grain dole. This is the pulse that keeps the Roman mob from rioting. We follow a cart, a plostrum, loaded with sacks from the warehouse. It is a heavy, two-wheeled vehicle. The wheels are solid wood, rimmed with iron. They make a deafening noise on the stone pavement. Clatter crash, clatter crash. The oxen pulling it are slow and patient, ignoring the noise. The cart heads towards the porticus minutia, the distribution center. Here, the scene changes from industrial to bureaucratic. There is a line of people, a very long line. These are the citizens entitled to the free grain. They stand in the shade of the portico, waiting. It is a monthly ritual. Each man holds a tessera, a small token carved from wood or cast in bronze or lead. It is his ticket. It has his name, or a number, and the specific day and arcade where he is to receive his ration. They clutch these tokens tightly. Losing one means starvation. We watch the line move. It is a shuffle. Step, wait. Step, wait. There is little talking. The focus is on the destination, the distribution counter. Behind the counter stand the officials. They have the measures, the modi. These are bronze buckets, verified for accuracy. A citizen steps up. He presents his tessera. The official checks it against a list. He nods. A sack is opened. The official scoops the grain into the modius. He fills it to the brim. Then he takes a straight stick, a rotellum, and scrapes it across the top of the bucket to level it. This is the strike. It ensures the measure is exact. Not a grain more, not a grain less. The grain is then poured into the citizen's own sack. The sound of the pouring is a dry hiss. The citizen ties his sack, hoists it onto his shoulder, and turns away. The next man steps up. The token clicks on the counter. The scoop dips into the grain. The strike levels the measure. It is a factory of charity. This grain will be taken home. It will be ground into flour in small hand mills, molae, that sit in the corners of cramped apartments, stone rubbing on stone. The flour will be mixed with water and perhaps a little salt and yeast. It will be baked into panes, round loaves of bread. This bread is the fuel of the city. But let us return to the street. The cart we followed is now empty, but others are full. Rome is a city of consumption, and the transport of goods within the city is a nightmare of congestion. To manage this, Julius Caesar passed a law, the Lex Iulia Municipalis. It banned heavy transport wagons from the streets during the daylight hours. So, during the day, the streets are for people. But as the sun sets, the city changes. We find a place to sit, on a low wall near the Forum Boreum, the cattle market. The light is fading, the shops are closing, the wooden shutters are pulled down and locked, the noise of the crowds dies down, and then the night shift begins. A low rumble starts in the distance. It grows louder. It is the sound of wooden wheels on stone. The ban is lifted. The carts are coming. They flood into the city from the gates, bringing in the timber, the stone, the wine, the supplies that could not move during the day. The noise is incredible. Juvenal, the satirist, complained that a man could not sleep in Rome because of the wagons. Let us listen to it. The iron tires grinding against the basalt paving stones, the shouting of the drovers cursing at their oxen. Move! Get on! The cracking of whips, the creaking of axles that need grease. It is a river of noise flowing through the narrow, twisting canyons of the streets. The carts are carrying massive blocks of marble for a new temple. We see a wagon with 4 oxen pulling a single white block. The weight is immense. The wagon groans. The oxen slip on the slick stones, their hooves striking sparks. The driver walks alongside, guiding them with a lantern. The light swings back and forth, casting long, dancing shadows against the brick walls of the tenements. We watch a wagon loaded with fir timbers, long trunks stripped of their branches, hanging off the back of the cart. They are destined for a building site where an insula collapsed last week. The wood smells of the forest, a strange, fresh scent in the stale air of the city night. The traffic jam is inevitable. 2 wagons meet in a narrow alley. Neither can back up. The drivers start to argue. Hand gestures, shouting. It is a timeless scene of urban frustration. Eventually, one wagon manages to squeeze into a doorway, allowing the other to scrape past. The hubcaps grind against each other, wood splinters. Then they move on. We are witnessing the metabolism of the city. While the citizens sleep, the city is fed and built. The contrast is stark. The stillness of the sleepers in the upper stories of the insulae and the chaotic, noisy grind of the logistics below. We walk away from the main thoroughfares into the smaller side streets. The noise fades to a dull roar in the background. Here, we encounter the vigiles, the night watch. They are the firefighters and the police of the city. They patrol in squads, carrying buckets and axes. They carry torches, bringing pools of light into the total darkness of the alleys. They are checking the doors of the shops. They are smelling the air for smoke. Fire is the great enemy. A fallen lamp, a spark from a hearth, and a whole block goes up. They walk with a measured tread. Their sandals slap softly on the stones. They stop to talk to a resident leaning out of a window. All is well, they say. Go to sleep. We continue our walk towards the river again. We want to see the water at night in the city. We reach the Pons Aemilius, the stone bridge. We lean over the parapet. Below us, the Tiber is black and silent, reflecting the few lights from the banks. The water swirls around the stone piers of the bridge. It is the same water that carried our ship, that floated our barge, that turned the wheels of the mills. Under the bridge, in the shadows, we can see the shapes of the homeless, the beggars, sleeping wrapped in rags. They too are part of the city. The river flows past them, indifferent. The air cools, the humidity rises. The smell of the river is strong here, mud and old water. We look back towards the Emporium. The work there has stopped for the night, mostly. The cranes are still, like sleeping herons. The warehouses are locked tight. The mountain of shards, Monte Testaccio, is a dark silhouette against the star-filled sky. We have seen the journey of the goods from the forest to the harbor, from the ship to the barge, from the warehouse to the hand of the citizen. It is a chain of unbroken effort, a chain of wood, iron, stone, and muscle. But there is one more aspect of this maritime world we have not touched upon: the maintenance of the infrastructure itself, the dredging of the harbors, the repair of the moles, the constant fight against silt. The Empire fights a war not just against barbarians, but against geology. We will look at the dredgers, the mudmen, the silent workers who keep the channels open. But for now, we listen to the city settling into its restless sleep. The rumble of the distant carts is a white noise, a backdrop to the stillness of the river. The river is a conveyor belt of water, but it carries a hidden passenger: silt. The Tiber is yellow, heavy with the soil of the mountains. Every day, tons of fine earth are washed down from the Apennines, suspended in the current until the water slows down at the harbor mouth or in the stillness of the basins at Portus. There, the silt settles. It falls like a microscopic snow, layer upon layer, invisible and relentless. If left unchecked, it would turn the harbor into a marsh. It would strangle the trade of Rome. So the battle against the bottom begins. We observe the dracae, the dredging boats. These are not noble vessels. They are flat, wide, and stained with the black mud of the deep. They are anchored firmly in the channel, held in place by 4 heavy chains to prevent them from drifting while they work. On the deck of the dredger, there is a simple, brutal machine. A long boom extends over the side. Hanging from it is a large iron scoop, or sometimes a heavy leather bag reinforced with metal rings. It is controlled by a windlass, a horizontal drum turned by men. The operation is a cycle of gravity and muscle. Release! The brake is kicked open. The chain rattles through the block. Clank, clank, clank. The scoop plummets into the water. We wait. We feel the thud through the hull as it hits the bottom. The foreman signals. The men at the windlass lean in. They push the handspikes. The chain tightens. The scoop drags along the harbor floor, biting into the accumulated mud. It is heavy work. The mud creates suction. The men grunt, their feet slipping on the wet deck. Slowly, the scoop breaks free. It rises through the water column. When it breaks the surface, it is a dripping, ugly mass of black sludge. It smells of sulfur and decay, the anaerobic breath of the seabed. The boom is swung inboard. The catch is dumped into the hold of the dredger or onto a waiting barge alongside. Splat. The mud spreads out, thick and oozing. Then the scoop goes down again, and again, and again. They move the boat a few feet and repeat. It is like painting a wall, but in reverse and underwater. They are removing the earth, bucket by bucket, to maintain the depth required for the great grain ships. It is a task that is never finished. As soon as they clear one section, the river brings more silt to fill it. It is the definition of Sisyphean labor, performed in the damp air of the estuary. But sometimes the problem is not mud. It is something harder: a lost anchor, a sunken barge, a collapsed section of masonry. For this, the grapple is not enough. For this, they need the urinatores, the divers, the guild of the urinatores. At Ostia is a proud one. Their work is dangerous, quiet, and solitary. We watch a diver preparing for a descent. He is a man of significant lung capacity, his chest broad and scarred. He strips down to a loincloth. He greases his body with oil. This helps to keep him warm in the cold water, but more importantly, it helps him slide through the water and protects his skin from the softening effect of long immersion. He takes a sponge, soaked in oil, and places it in his mouth. He does not bite down on it yet. He holds a heavy stone weight in his hands, attached to a rope. This is his elevator. He cannot waste breath swimming down. He must plummet. He sits on the gunwale of the boat. He takes deep, slow breaths, expanding the diaphragm, calming the heart. He is hyper-oxygenating his blood. He nods. He bites the sponge. The oil is believed to help equalize the pressure or perhaps to seal the throat. He jumps. Splash. The weight drags him down instantly. The light from the surface fades, turning from white to green to a murky gray. He is in the silent world. He reaches the bottom. He lets go of the stone, which is hauled back up by his assistant on the surface. He is alone. The pressure presses against his ears, his sinuses. He moves with efficient, slow strokes. He is looking for a blockage in the sluice gate of the harbor. The water is clouded with silt. He sees mostly with his hands. He feels the slime-covered stones. He feels the iron grating. There, a tree trunk, waterlogged and heavy, has jammed against the gate. He cannot move it alone. He takes a rope he brought down with him, tied to his waist. He loops it around the trunk. He ties a knot, a double half-hitch, by touch alone. His lungs are beginning to burn. The carbon dioxide is building up, the air hunger, but he does not panic. Panic burns oxygen. He stays calm. He checks the knot. He tugs on the safety line 3 times. The signal. His assistant on the boat begins to haul him up. He ascends, watching the light grow brighter. He breaks the surface, gasping, spitting out the oil and the water. "Heave!" he shouts. The crew on the boat engages the winch. The rope tightens. The tree trunk is pulled free from the depths, breaking the surface like a dark monster. The sluice is clear. The water flows again. The diver rests on the deck, shivering slightly despite the sun. His job is done for the hour. He stares at the water, knowing he must go back down. We leave the divers and look at the walls they maintain. The piers and breakwaters are built of opus cementitium, that miraculous Roman concrete. But even rock wears away. The constant assault of the waves, the grinding of the ships against the quay, the chemical attack of the salt, it all takes a toll. Repairing a harbor wall is a feat of engineering. We see a team constructing a cofferdam. They drive a ring of wooden piles into the seabed, interlocking them to form a watertight box around the damaged section. The pounding of the pile driver is a slow, rhythmic boom that echoes across the water. Boom, pause, boom, pause. Once the piles are driven, the water inside the box must be removed. We see the Archimedes screws again, deployed in batteries. Men turn the cranks. Water pours out of the top of the pipes. Slowly, the level inside the cofferdam drops. The seabed is exposed to the air for the first time in decades. Crabs scuttle away in the mud. Small fish flop in the puddles. Now the masons can descend. They work in a muddy, damp pit below the level of the sea. They chisel away the rotten concrete. They mix new mortar, pozzolana, lime, and aggregate. They pour it into the forms. It is a race against the leaks. The wooden walls of the dam hiss with water forcing its way in. The pumps must keep turning. The masons work fast, troweling the gray slurry, packing it tight. They are healing the harbor's wounds. Once the concrete sets, the piles are pulled up. The water rushes back in. The wall is whole again, ready to withstand another 50 years of battering by the Mediterranean. Let us shift our gaze from the depths to the heights. At the entrance of the harbor stands the lighthouse, the Pharos. It is a beacon of safety, but it is also a machine that consumes fuel. The fire at the top must never go out. We stand at the base of the tower. It is a massive structure, built in tiers like a wedding cake. There is a ramp spiraling up the interior, wide enough for a donkey. And that is exactly what we see. Donkeys laden with bundles of wood or sacks of charcoal. They plod up the ramp, Clip-clop, clip-clop. The air inside the tower is cool and smells of stone dust. The higher we go, the more we hear the wind whistling around the openings. We reach the lantern room at the summit. It is hot here. The fire is burning in a great iron brazier. It is not a roaring bonfire, but a controlled, intense heat. The Pharologus, the lighthouse keeper, is tending it. He is a man with soot-stained skin and squinting eyes. He feeds the fire with specific types of wood, resin-rich pine for a bright flame, or perhaps oil soaked into oakum. He adjusts a polished bronze mirror behind the flame. The mirror focuses the light, sending a beam out to the horizon. He steps out onto the balcony. The wind is strong here, whipping his tunic. He looks out to sea. He is not looking for beauty. He is looking for customers. He counts the sails on the horizon. He notes the weather. If a fog is rolling in, he might blow a great horn or bang a gong to warn the ships. He is the static counterpart to the mobile gubernator. The view from up here puts everything into perspective. We see the curve of the coast. We see the hexagonal basin of Trajan, looking like a geometry diagram drawn in water. We see the Tiber winding like a snake towards Rome, and we see the ships, tiny specks, following the invisible lines of commerce. As the sun begins to set, the keeper adds more fuel. The fire brightens. From the deck of a ship 20 miles out, it looks like a low star, a star that says, "Here is the land, here is safety, here is Rome." But the sea is not always open for business. The Romans understood the seasons. They respected the winter. From November to March, the mare clausum, the closed sea, was in effect. The weather becomes unpredictable. Storms are frequent. The cloud cover prevents navigation by stars. It is too dangerous to sail. So, as the days shorten, the harbor begins to change. The frantic pace of the summer slows down. The last grain ships from Alexandria race to get in before the weather turns. Once they are unloaded, they do not leave. They are laid up. We walk along the quay in late autumn. The ships are stripped. The sails are taken down and stored in the warehouses to prevent rot. The ropes are unreeved and coiled away. The yards are lowered to the deck. The ships look naked, skeletal. They are hauled out of the water or moved into the most sheltered corners of the harbor. Some are pulled up onto the slipways for long-term maintenance. The hulls are scraped clean of barnacles. The lead sheathing is patched. The wood is allowed to dry. The crews are paid off or given reduced wages to perform maintenance. Many return to their villages or find work in the city. The harbor becomes a quiet place. The cranes stop creaking. The shouts of the stevedores fade. The dominant sound is the wind howling through the rigging of the stationary ships and the rain lashing against the stones. This is the hibernation of the logistics machine. The empire survives the winter on the stockpiles we saw earlier. The grain in the Horea, the oil in the vats, the wine in the cellars. The summer's frantic activity was all for this, to build a buffer against the winter. We sit in a tavern near the port. It is warm inside. A fire burns in the hearth. The patrons are sailors waiting out the season, shipwrights and locals. They drink hot wine spiced with pepper. They tell stories, not stories of battles, but stories of storms. I was off the coast of Crete, one says. Waves as high as the temple of Jupiter. We lost the rudder, says another. Drifted for 3 days. The atmosphere is one of shared survival. They have fought the sea and won, or at least, they haven't lost yet. They know that come March, with the festival of the Isidis Navigium, the opening of the sea, the madness will begin again. The ships will be launched, the sails will be bent on, the grain will flow. But for now, the sea is gray and angry. The harbor is a refuge. We watch the rain streak the window of the tavern. Outside, the ships rock gently at their moorings, dreaming of the open water. The rhythm has slowed to a long, slow beat, a winter rest. We have seen the life cycle of the trade, the building, the loading, the sailing, the arrival, the distribution, the maintenance, and the rest. But there are still details we have missed. The specific legal contracts that bind this all together, the insurance, the risk, the money, the silent flow of silver that mirrors the flow of grain. We need to understand how a merchant funds such a voyage. The Finis Nauticum, the maritime loan. It is a gamble, a high-stakes bet placed on a wooden hull. We will look at the tablets, the seals, and the bankers who sit in the forum, watching the weather with as much anxiety as the sailors, and we should look at the passengers again. Not the wealthy ones, but the soldiers being transported, the official post, the communications network that rides piggyback on the trade routes, the letters sent home, the news of the empire traveling at the speed of a sail. The fire in the tavern crackles. The smell of wood smoke and wet wool is comforting. We are safe on land. The story continues, not on the waves, but in the ledger books and the letter scrolls. The fire in the tavern burns low, turning the wood into glowing embers that pulse with a soft orange light. While the sailors drink and wait for the winter storms to pass, another kind of work continues. Work that does not depend on the wind, but on ink, wax, and silver. The maritime trade is a physical beast of wood and canvas, but it is fed by a circulatory system of capital. Without the money, the ships do not sail. We leave the tavern and the smell of damp wool, and we travel, in our mind's eye, to the office. In Ostia, behind the theater, lies the Piazzale delle Corporazioni, the square of the corporations. It is a vast rectangular colonnade, a shopping mall for logistics. In the center is a temple, but lining the perimeter are nearly 70 small offices, the stations. Let us walk along this colonnade. The ground beneath our feet is a history book written in mosaic, black and white tiles. Tesserae. Each office has a mosaic in front of it, advertising its business. We stop and look down. Here is a mosaic showing a grain measure, a modius, flanked by 2 ships. It reads, "The Guild of the Grain Merchants." We walk a few steps further. Here is an elephant, crude but recognizable, representing the trade with Africa, ivory and wild beasts. Next, a lighthouse and 2 fish. These offices are not bustling with retail shoppers. They are meeting places for the naviculari, the ship owners, and the negotiatories, the merchants. It is here that the deals are struck. It is here that the Finis Nauticum, the sea loan, is negotiated. Imagine the interior of one of these offices. It is small, cool, and austere. A table, a few stools, shelves stacked with scrolls. A banker, an Argentarius, sits at the table. He is weighing coins. He uses a small bronze balance, placing the gold ori on one side and the counterweights on the other. Clink. Balance. Clink. Balance. He checks for clipping, for shaving, ensuring the currency is sound. The merchant sits opposite him. They are discussing a voyage to Alexandria to buy wheat. The merchant needs capital to buy the cargo and pay the crew. The banker provides the loan. But this is not a normal loan. It is high risk. If the ship sinks, if Neptune claims the vessel, the merchant does not have to repay the loan. The banker takes the loss. Because of this risk, the interest rate is high, often 12% or more for the duration of the voyage, far higher than the standard land-based interest. The contract is written on a wax tablet, a tabula. The stylus scratches into the soft black wax, curling up little shavings. The terms are precise. The name of the ship, the name of the captain, the route, the specific cargo, the repayment date, usually within 20 days of arrival at Ostia. Witnesses press their signet rings into the wax. The tablet is closed, tied with string, and sealed. It is a bond of trust and law, stored in a wooden chest until the ship returns. There is a quiet tension in these rooms. The men are gambling on the weather, on the pirates, on the competence of a captain they might barely know. They wait for news, and news, in the Roman world, travels at the speed of a sail or a horse. There is no postal service for private citizens. If you want to send a letter to your agent in Carthage, you must find someone going there. You walk down to the harbor, asking captains, "Are you bound for Africa?" You hand your letter to a stranger, perhaps giving him a small coin for his trouble. The letter is a fragile thing, a slip of papyrus rolled up and sealed with clay. It contains instructions. Buy the oil at this price. Sell the wine if the market is high. The weather here is cold. If you are an official, however, you use the cursus publicus, the state post. This is a machine of relay stations, mansiones, spaced every 20 miles along the great Roman roads. Fresh horses wait at every stop. A courier can change horses without stopping, galloping from Rome to Brindisi in days. But for the merchant, for the grain trader, information is slower. He relies on the rumor of the port. I saw the Isis sailing past Sicily. The wind has been from the south for 3 days. They piece together the location of their fortunes from scraps of conversation. Let us delve into a specific legal concept that governs this world, a concept so boringly practical it is fascinating. General average, or the lex Rhodia de iactu, the Rhodian law of jettison. Imagine a ship caught in a storm. The waves are crashing over the deck. The ship is heavy, sitting too low in the water. It is in danger of foundering. The captain makes a decision. They must lighten the ship. They must throw cargo overboard. They drag crates of expensive pottery to the rail. Splash, down they go. They roll amphorae of wine into the sea. Splash, the ship rises, it survives, it limps into port. Now who pays for the lost cargo? The merchant whose pottery was thrown overboard. In the old days, yes, it was his bad luck. But under Roman law, which adopted the Rhodian custom, the loss is shared. Everyone who had cargo on that ship, and the ship owner himself, must contribute to cover the loss. If your oil was saved because my pottery was thrown away, you must pay me a portion of the value of my pottery. This requires immense calculation. The agrimensores and accountants must value the ship, the saved cargo, and the lost cargo. They create a ratio of contribution. It is an early form of insurance, a communal spreading of risk. It turns a disaster into a math problem. We can imagine the arguments in the office at Ostia, the disputing of values, the consulting of price lists. Your pottery was not worth that much. My ship was damaged. That counts too. It is the dull, grinding friction of commerce resolving itself. While the accountants argue, let us look at a different kind of ship, one that defies the normal rules of loading. The navis lapidaria, the stone ship. Rome is a city of brick, but it likes to dress in marble. The Emperor Augustus boasted that he found Rome a city of brick and left it a city of marble. That marble had to come from somewhere, from Carrara in the north, from Greece, from Turkey, from Egypt. And it comes in massive blocks, or even more challenging, as monolithic obelisks. How do you put a 300-ton granite obelisk onto a wooden ship? You cannot use a crane. The ropes would snap, the timbers would shatter. The Romans developed a method of pure patience and physics. They build the ship, but they do not launch it. They build it in a dry dock, a pit dug on the beach. Then, they bring the obelisk to the ship on rollers. They roll it alongside the hull. They fill the ship with sand, packing it tight until it is a solid mound. They roll the obelisk onto the sand-filled ship. Then, they carefully dig the sand out from under the obelisk. Slowly, inch by inch, the great stone settles down into the hold. It takes weeks. Once the stone is resting on the keel blocks, they remove the rest of the sand. Now the ship is loaded, sitting in the dry pit. To launch it, they dig a channel from the sea to the pit. They break the dam. The water rushes in. The ship floats, hopefully. If the calculations were correct, the displacement of the hull is greater than the weight of the stone. It lifts off the bottom. Then, they tow it out to sea. These ships are massive. Some are described as being like floating islands. They move very slowly. They often require 2 or 3 smaller ships to tow them. On board, the crew lives around the stone. There is no hold to go down into. The stone takes up everything. They walk on top of the cargo. The stone is cold and hard under their feet. It is a piece of a mountain, cut and polished, floating on the deep. When such a ship arrives at Portus, the unloading is equally complex. They cannot lift the obelisk out. They must reverse the process or use massive capstans and ramps to slide it off. Sometimes they simply dismantle the ship around the stone. The ship is a single-use wrapper for the cargo. There is a specific dock in Rome, the Marmorata, dedicated to this stone trade. We walk there now. It is south of the Emporium. The ground here is white with dust. Blocks of marble lie in the grass, waiting. Some have been here for years. They are marked with the date of quarrying and the name of the consul. In the consulship of Trajan we see the stonecutters at work. Lapidary. They are rough-hewing the blocks before they are moved to the building sites to save weight. Chisel and mallet. Tink, tink, tink. It is a higher-pitched sound than the wood chopping. Sparks fly when the iron hits the hard granite. The air tastes of chalk. The stonecutters wear masks of linen over their mouths to keep the dust out. They look like ghosts, covered in white powder from head to toe. They work with a slow rhythm, following the veins of the marble. If they strike too hard, the stone cracks. A mistake here destroys months of labor. So they tap, gently, persistently. They are eroding the stone into shape. Nearby, a sculptor is working on a sarcophagus. He is using a drill, a terebra. It is a bow drill. He wraps the string around the drill shaft and moves the bow back and forth. Ziwup, ziwup. The drill bit bites into the marble, creating deep folds in a toga or the curls of a beard. It is tedious work. He must drill hundreds of holes to create the depth of the relief. He sits on a low stool, his back bent, lost in the microscopic details of the stone. The Marmorata is a quiet place compared to the grain docks. The cargo here does not spoil. It does not smell. It sits and waits. It has the patience of geology. We sit on a block of Cipollino marble with its onion-like green swirls. It is cool to the touch. We watch the river flow past. The winter is ending. The sun is getting stronger. The closed sea is about to open. The Isidis Navigium festival is approaching. This is the day the season officially starts. The priests of Isis will carry a model boat down to the sea and launch it, offering prayers for the safety of the sailors. We can feel the anticipation in the port. The hammers are louder in the shipyards. The caulking is being finished. The smell of fresh pitch is everywhere. The crews are gathering, saying goodbye to their families. The taverns are emptying out earlier as men report for duty. The magister of our grain ship is back at the office in the square of corporations. He is signing the final documents. He has his loan. He has his crew. He has his orders. Proceed to Carthage, load wheat, return. It is a simple loop, but it is the thread that holds the empire together. He walks out of the office, squinting in the sunlight. He walks past the mosaics, the elephant, the fish, the lighthouse. He walks down to the quay. His ship is there, bobbing slightly. It has been scraped and painted. It looks eager. The sails are brought out of storage. They are stiff and smell of the warehouse. The sailors stretch them out on the deck, checking for rot or rat damage. They bend them onto the yards. The ropes are reeved through the blocks. The pulley wheels turn freely, greased with fresh fat. The ship is waking up from its hibernation. We step aboard one last time. The deck is clean, the bilges are dry, the water in the dolia is fresh. We stand at the rail and look out at the harbor mouth. The chain that closed the harbor at night is being lowered. The way is open, but before we sail, we must attend to one final crucial aspect of Roman life, the favor of the gods. No ship leaves without sacrifice. We watch the captain standing at the stern. He has his head covered with a fold of his toga. A small altar is set up. Incense is burning. The smoke rises straight up in the still air. He pours a libation. Wine splashes onto the deck and flows into the scuppers. He offers a prayer to the winds, to the venti. He promises a portion of the profit to the temple if the voyage is safe. It is a business transaction with the divine. Insurance of a different kind. The chicken, the sacred chicken, is consulted. Does it eat the grain offered to it? Yes, it pecks greedily. A good omen. The crew relaxes. The anxiety of the departure is replaced by the routine of work. Let go aft. The command rings out. The ropes are cast off. The distance between the ship and the quay grows. A strip of green water widens. We are disconnected from the land once more. The static world of the stonecutter and the banker is left behind. We return to the fluid world of the sailor. As the ship moves towards the harbor mouth, passing the great lighthouse, we look back at the complex we have explored. The warehouses, the cranes, the offices, the hill of shards. It is a massive machine, built of brick and sweat, designed to do one thing: move matter from the edge of the world to the center. And it does it with a grinding, boring, beautiful efficiency. The bow dips into the first swell of the open sea. The horizon is a straight line of blue. We are traveling again. But this time, we are not just observers of the ship. We are observers of the system. We understand the weight of the grain, the cost of the wood, the risk of the loan. We understand the silence of the underwater diver and the dust of the stonecutter. The wind fills the sail. The wood groans. The wake begins to foam. We settle into our spot on the deck, leaning against a coil of rope. The rhythm returns. Pitch and roll. Pitch and roll. We are safe in the belly of the routine. The ship is empty of grain, but it cannot return to the sea in this state. An unladen Roman merchantman is a dangerous thing. It sits too high in the water. Its center of gravity is too high. A stiff breeze would knock it over like a toy. It needs weight. It needs ballast. And so, we witness the most counterintuitive industry of the port, the trade in dirt and stones. There are designated areas, ballast grounds, where ships discharge the sand they brought from Alexandria and take on the sand of Ostia. It is a geological exchange program. The sands of the Nile Delta are dumped on the Italian coast, and the volcanic sands of Latium are shoveled into the hold for the return journey. Watch the Sakari again. They are not carrying valuable wheat now. They are carrying heavy baskets of river stones and coarse sand. They trudge up the gangplank and dump the load into the hold. It must be spread evenly. If the ballast shifts, the ship is doomed. The gubernator watches the waterline. He needs the ship to settle down, to find its trim. Sometimes they use something more useful than sand. Opus spicatum, bricks, or volcanic pozzolana, dust, which is in high demand across the Mediterranean for making concrete. Or perhaps a cargo of cheap Italian wine for the colonies. But mostly, Rome consumes. The ships come full and leave with stones. It is a stark reminder of the economic imbalance of the ancient world. The provinces feed the city, and the city exports administration and law in return. While the ship is being ballasted, the crew has free time. This brings us to the social heart of the maritime world, the collegia, the guilds. Every trade in Ostia and Rome has a guild. The ship owners, the grain measurers, the diver, the lighterman, even the ballast porters. These are not just trade unions. They are social clubs, burial societies, and extended families. Let us enter the Schola of the Trajanic shipbuilders. It is a building near the harbor, funded by the members' dues. Inside, there is a large dining room, a triclinium. The walls are painted with scenes of, you guessed it, shipbuilding. Tonight is the monthly banquet, the cena. The members are gathering. These are rough men with calloused hands, but here they follow a strict decorum. We look at the marble plaque on the wall, the lex collegi, the bylaws of the club. They are incredibly specific. Rule 4. Any member who starts a fight during the banquet shall be fined 4 sestertii. Rule 7. Any member who speaks out of turn or insults the president shall be fined 2 jugs of wine. Rule 12. Upon the death of a member, the guild will provide 300 sestertii for the funeral, and every member must attend the walking procession. It is a world of rules. The meeting begins. The magister of the guild reads the minutes. They discuss the price of wine for the next dinner. They vote on admitting a new member. It is bureaucracy, but it is comforting bureaucracy. It gives these men, who live lives of danger and hard labor, a sense of dignity and belonging. They are not just workers, they are fratre, brothers. We sit in the corner and listen to the drone of the meeting. Regarding the purchase of the new oil lamps, the voice is monotonous and soothing. The members nod. Some are dozing off on the benches. It is a safe space away from the spray of the sea and the shouting of the docks. The importance of the burial fund cannot be overstated. For a Roman, to lie unburied is a horror. The soul wanders restlessly. The guild guarantees a proper send-off. They own a communal tomb, a columbarium, outside the city walls. We can visit it. It is a small, sunken room with niches in the walls for the urns of ashes. Each niche has a small plaque. Here lies Lucius, a good caulker. Here lies Marcus, a honest porter. It is quiet here. The dust motes dance in the shaft of light coming from the door. This is the final destination of the harbor workers. After a life of noise and motion, they end up in a small clay pot in a cool, silent room, surrounded by their colleagues. But the trade route does not stop at the grave. It extends even further inland, beyond Rome. The Tiber is navigable for smaller boats far upstream, into the Umbrian and Etruscan countryside. We leave the heavy sea ships and the bustle of Ostia and Rome behind, and hop onto a small river craft, a lintras. We are poling upstream, past the city. The river narrows. The banks become green and wooded. We are entering the quiet heart of Italy. Here, the river transport is used for timber and stone coming down, but also for local distribution. We pass small jetties where a single farmer is loading a few baskets of cheese or vegetables onto a boat. The pace here is incredibly slow. The current is gentle. The boatman pushes the pole into the mud. Push, glide, push, glide. The water gurgles against the hull. Dragonflies buzz over the reeds. We see a watermill on the bank, its wooden wheel turning slowly in the current. Creak, splash, creak, splash. It is grinding grain, just like the great mills in the city, but on a tiny village scale. We are looking at the capillaries of the system. The giant arteries are the sea routes, the veins are the great barges, and here are the capillaries, bringing the goods to the furthest reaches of the habitation. Let us consider the navigational hazards of the river. Not storms, but snags, sunken trees, shifting sandbars. The river changes shape every season. The boatman must read the water surface. A ripple here means a rock. A swirl there means deep water. He knows the river like a face. And there are the tolls. Every town, every bridge might have a toll collector. The portorium. We stop at a small bridge. A soldier leans over the rail. What are you carrying? 6 jars of oil and a bundle of wool. That will be 2 asses. The coins are tossed up. The boat proceeds. It is a constant, low-level friction of commerce. Back at Ostia, our ballasted ship is ready. The return journey will be different. The ship is stiffer in the water. It rolls faster. Snap roll. Snap roll. It is uncomfortable for the crew. But they are going home, or at least to the other end of the loop. We must also mention the passengers on the return trip. Who leaves Rome? Officials going to their provinces, soldiers transferring to a new legion, exiles banished from the city, and tourists. Yes, Romans were tourists. They traveled to Greece to see the temples, to Egypt to see the pyramids. We see a wealthy Roman matron boarding the ship. She has her retinue of slaves. She is complaining about the smell of the ballast sand. She has brought her own tent to set up on deck, made of silk. She brings a portable toilet, a lasanum. She is trying to maintain the bubble of her patrician life in the rough world of the ship. The sailors roll their eyes but take her money. As the ship prepares to cast off, we notice a small, peculiar ritual. The suavetorilia, a sacrifice of a pig, a sheep, and a bull. This is usually for big state events, but smaller versions happen for the fleet. The animals are led around the perimeter of the gathered crowd. It is a purification. The air smells of incense and roast meat. It is a sensory anchor in the abstract world of logistics. We also see the medicus of the ship, if it is a large one. The ship's doctor. He has a small chest of tools, bronze scalpels, bone livers, probes, and jars of herbs. Acetum, vinegar, honey, poppy juice. His job is to treat the crushed fingers, the rope burns, the fevers. He is a mechanic of the human body, just as the carpenter is a mechanic of the hull. He sits on a coil of rope, sharpening his scalpel on a whetstone. Shh, shh, shh. The sun is setting on the ballast ground. The piles of gray sand turn violet. The workers shoulder their shovels and head home. The cycle is complete. The import has become the export of emptiness. The fullness of the grain has been replaced by the emptiness of the stone. We sit on the warm stones of the breakwater. We watch the ship we have followed, now riding a bit lower with its load of sand. Hoist its sail. It is leaving. It catches the evening land breeze. It slips silently out of the harbor mouth, past the lighthouse. It gets smaller and smaller. The white square of the sail turns pink in the sunset, then gray. Finally, it is just a speck indistinguishable from the waves. It has gone back into the silence of the horizon. We remain behind. We are left with the static structures, the warehouses, the guild halls, the tombs, the river. The machine continues to run, even as the individual parts disappear. We feel the cooling of the stone under us. The heat of the day is radiating back into the sky. The seagulls are settling down on the roofs of the Horea. Their cries are lonely and intermittent. We have explored the wooden world, the stone world, the underwater world, and the paper world of the trade. We have seen the sweat and the physics. Now we are ready to let the image fade, to let the history become what it truly is, a memory of motion. The water laps at the base of the lighthouse. Slap, wash, slap, wash. It is the sound of time erasing the work of man, slowly, patiently. We are ready for the final reflection. The night has fully claimed the harbor now. The purple of the twilight has deepened into the absolute charcoal of the deepest hours. The distinction between the sea and the sky has vanished completely, leaving only the rhythmic sound of the water to tell them apart. We are still sitting on the stone of the quay, but the bustle of the day feels like a distant memory, a story told about a different world. The great machine of Ostia has stopped. The cranes, those skeletal birds of wood and rope, are locked in position, their jibs pointing towards the stars. They do not creak now. They are still. The ropes hang heavy and motionless in the damp air. The pulleys are cold. The heat of friction generated by the day's labor has dissipated into the cool night breeze. We walk slowly back through the streets of the port town. The warehouses, the Horea, loom on either side like cliffs of brick. They are sealed. The grain inside is sleeping. The millions of kernels of wheat, harvested in the sun of the Nile, are now resting in the cool dark of the Tiber Delta. They are a stored potential, energy waiting to be released. But for now, they are just mass. Silent, heavy mass. We pass the bakery. The fires are banked, but the smell of yeast and warm flour still lingers in the air, faint and comforting. It is the smell of civilization. It is the smell of safety. Inside, the millstones are stationary. The donkeys that turn them are asleep in their stalls, their heads lowered, their breathing slow and rhythmic. Ha! Ah! The dust of the flour has settled on the floor, coating the stones in a soft white blanket. We pass the bathhouse. The water in the great pools is still. The surface is like a mirror, reflecting the moon which has just risen above the rooftops. The steam has cleared. The noise of splashing and conversation is gone. There is only the drip, drip, drip of a condensation droplet falling from the vaulted ceiling into the pool. It sends tiny ripples out across the water, concentric circles that widen and fade, until the surface is glass again. We walk out towards the necropolis, the city of the dead that lines the road to Rome. It is not a scary place. It is a place of rest. The tombs are like small houses. We can read the inscriptions in the moonlight. To the spirits of the departed. These were the people who built the ships, who carried the sacks, who counted the coins. They are part of the silence now. They have joined the majority. Their work is done. The ledger is closed. Let us drift forward in time, just for a moment. Let us imagine this place as it is today. Ostia Antica, a ruin. The roofs are gone. The upper stories have collapsed, but the walls remain. The silence we feel tonight is the same silence that hangs over the ruins today. The grass grows between the paving stones of the Decumanus Maximus. The umbrella pines cast long, soft shadows over the mosaics. In the ruins, the wind blows through the empty doorways of the warehouses. It whispers through the hollow dolia. the great jars buried in the earth. It is a peaceful sound. It is the sound of history sleeping. The frantic energy of the empire has evaporated, leaving only the shell, the skeleton of the logistics. The marble counters of the thermopolium, the snack bar, are still there, cold and smooth, waiting for customers who will never come. But let us return to our ancient night. We are not in the ruins. We are in the living city, asleep. The stillness is a pause, not an end, but it is a deep pause. The breathing of the city is slow. Inhale, exhale. We find a place to rest near the riverbank. The Tiber flows past us, black and oily. It moves silently, carrying the silt, the mud, the dissolved earth. It has seen everything we have described. It has carried the ships, the barges, the timber, the stone. It is the oldest witness. It does not judge. It does not tire. It simply flows. Listen to the river. It makes a different sound than the sea. It is a whisper, a hushing sound. Shh. It rubs against the clay banks. It swirls around the roots of the willows. It is the sound of continuity. Empires rise and fall. Warehouses are built and crumble. But the water flows from the mountains to the sea. Always. We look up at the lighthouse one last time. The fire at the top is a small, steady point of orange. It is not flickering. It is a constant watchfulness. It says, "We are here. We are safe." It is a night light for the world. The anxiety of the trade, the fear of storms, the fear of pirates, the fear of bankruptcy, has all dissolved in the darkness. There is only the fact of the arrival. The goods are here. The people are fed. The system worked. We close our eyes. We can still see the afterimage of the white sails against the blue sea. We can still feel the phantom rocking of the deck beneath our feet. Rock, rock, rock. It is a gentle motion now, like a cradle. We are floating. Not on the sea, but on the river of time. The details begin to blur. The sharp edges of the bricks soften. The smell of the pitch and the pine fades away. The counting of the sacks stops. 1, 2, 3, and then nothing. Just the space between the numbers. The quiet space. The weight of the amphorae is gone. The strain on the rope is gone. The heat of the sun is gone. There is only the cool, velvet dark. The stars wheel overhead, turning on the great celestial axis, slow and majestic. They mark the hours of the night watch, the vigilia. First watch, second watch, third watch. The ship is at anchor. The anchor is buried deep in the mud, holding fast. The chain is slack. The hull rests on the water, heavy and secure. The wood sleeps. The iron sleeps. The stone sleeps. Everything is heavy. Everything is slow. Everything is quiet. We have traveled back in time to look at the quiet frontier skills that helped people survive the wilderness in that time. We have seen the labor and the logistics, and now we leave them to their rest. So, you tired little peeps, the harbor is closed, the gates are locked, the sea is calm. It is time to drift away from the shore. Let the current take you. Let the darkness wrap around you like a warm wool cloak. The history is boring, and that is good, because in the boredom there is peace, and in the peace there is sleep. Good night. If this journey through the duller side of history helped you unwind and maybe even drift off, please let me know. First, hit that like button if you enjoyed this historical lullaby. Second, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss future installments of history too boring to keep you awake. Finally, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below about which historical topic you find so mundane. It deserves to be our next sleepy video. Your suggestions will shape our journey into the world's most delightfully dull past.